Hello, boys and girls. Lord Hawkeye here again. Okay, so you've all probably heard the news, but if you haven't, I'll reiterate for you. Assad, the head of Syria, supposedly used chemical weapons on innocent people. We don't know for sure yet, because remember, this is all a lot of propaganda and stuff like this. And Trump, in response, bombed the base where the chemical attacks supposedly came from. That's the story we're told, but of course, new information could always come out since the story is fresh, so keep that in mind. And this has got a lot of people quite upset about it, especially Trump supporters who, one of the reasons they voted for him was because they didn't want more wars. Totally understandable. It's also promoted a lot of Trump haters to come out of the woodwork and start babbling about how right they are and how terrible we were for voting for Trump and so on. We'll get to them in a moment. But here's my stance on it, taking a few questions. First question, do I approve of this action? No. I'm against the U.S. intervening in other countries. It does not have a good track record, and the fog of war just makes it impossible to really do the right thing when you do it, no matter how well-intentioned it may be. So, no, I don't agree with this decision based on what I know currently. I think it was a mistake. I think Trump may have been well-meaning, but I think cooler heads should have prevailed there. So, just to make that clear, no, I don't agree with what he did. Next, do I think that this is the apocalypse people are making it out to be? No, I don't. Let's keep in mind, previous presidents have done way worse things, and we're all still here. There was no World War III that happened. So if all that stuff before didn't cause World War III, I highly doubt this is going to. At least not alone. Next, does this change my stance on Trump or my stance that he was the right choice? No. Because remember what I said in my previous video, that one of the questions you always need to ask is, what compared to what? And people say, Trump did this was a bad thing. Okay, I agree. This wasn't the right thing to do, at least based on what I know. So it was bad. But compared to what? Compared to Hillary, who was a complete war hawk? Yes, she was. Yes, she was. Look at her record. The woman is unapologetically a war hawk. She has caused deaths already. So, yeah, there's no way you could argue that Hillary would have been preferable. Bernie Sanders? No, the guy's a communist. Communism inevitably leads to war. We all know this. And not to mention the guy's a complete fraud. The guy hasn't spoken one lick of truth, as we've seen. Gary Johnson, I know Gary Johnson was once cool, but let's be honest, people. The guy doesn't stand up to the media. Even if he was elected president, he would have caved. He would have left the left have their banana republic. And yeah, if the left had their banana republic, if you think the wars would have stopped then, you're living in a dream world. So, even considering all this, even worst case scenario, I'm sorry, but Trump has got a long way to go before he is any way comparable to the complete train wrecks that were the other options. So let's keep some perspective here, shall we? And that brings us to certain individuals who have taken it upon themselves to virtue signal about, see, Trump's was the devil, we were right. Give me a break. Okay, first of all, if you're using an incident like this in order to grandstand and virtue signal, that really does not speak well to your character, so you might want to just take a step back there and reevaluate what you're doing. Believable. And of course, the most important question of all, what can we learn from this? Well, we've learned that Trump's not perfect. Yeah, no one claimed he was. I certainly never claimed he was. Even before this, there were things he did I didn't agree with. I didn't agree with him funding NASA. I think NASA's a complete waste of time. I didn't agree with him pushing the whole women in STEM thing. I thought that was a waste of time, too. Women can go into STEM if they want. They don't need leg ups. That's silly. It doesn't, and it basically says that women are weak, which I don't think they are. But anyway, So this, I think this was a misstep based on what I know so far. Of course, new information is still coming out, and the problem is Syria is a corrupt dictatorship. So there's a lot of propaganda coming out of there. So it's very difficult to know who's responsible for what. Maybe Assad did do it, even though people have pointed out he had nothing to gain by doing so. Okay, fair enough, but the guy's a corrupt dictator. They're not always known for being rational or doing the right thing. Some rogue element within his regime did it. That's possible. The rebels did it in order to frame him. That's also possible. We don't know. We don't know exactly what's happened yet. So that still is yet to be determined. But if what they're saying is true, even if Assad did chemical weapon the people and Trump in return bombed the base, and all credit to him. Deaths were minimized in that. I heard there was none, although it's a little hard to believe. But if efforts were made to minimize deaths, okay, credit given we're due there. But nonetheless, I still don't think it was a good idea. I don't think it's the U.S.'s job to be doing stuff like that, because it never ends up working out. So, I don't agree with the decision. So, I think Trump was wrong there. But let's remember, even if in the end Trump turns out to be a mistake, that doesn't make the haters right. The haters are still completely wrong. And I mean, let's say Trump turns out to be a complete disaster, complete mistake, totally shouldn't have done it, even worse than Hillary. It would be very difficult for him to be even half as bad as Hillary, but let's suspend reality for a second and say he was. If Trump turns out to be a disaster, guess what? To the haters out there, the U.S. does not owe you any favors for any of this, because you guys did a terrible job of arguing your case. When the election was happening, when people were stating their concerns and saying why they were voting for Trump, what you should have done is you should have listened to their concerns and explained to them, made the case why voting for someone else would have better addressed those concerns. You people did not do that. You jumped up and down, lit your hair on fire, and screamed racism, sexism, and blah, 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 and all the other nonsense. So if Trump's elected and he turns out to be a disaster, guess what? You're partially to blame for that because you acted so completely wretched and horrible that you drove more people to vote for him just because they didn't want the idea of people like you being in charge. So that's something the left still needs to come to grips with, and until they do come to grips with it, they're never going to win again. I mean, I think the left's pretty much irredeemable at this point. I mean, unless the left got down on their knees, begged forgiveness, and did some serious soul searching and some serious effort to fix all the damage they've done, I can't ever see voting for them, even in Canada here. I mean, I normally don't even bother voting, but in this case, because even the left up in Canada has been so utterly wretched that next election, I am voting right down the side, just as my huge middle finger to them. I mean, that's how utterly despicable they've been up in here. They've been here in Canada, and they've been even worse in the U.S. and in Europe too. Just all around horrible. So if voting right turns out to be a bad idea, guess what? The people who did such a terrible job of arguing for alternatives, you weren't helping. I'll tell you that much. No. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. And just remember, everybody, let cooler heads prevail. Let's not start jumping up and down, lighting our hair on fire like the leftists do. Because remember, look how much good that's done them so far. Anyway, until next time, be aware and be wise.